In this morning's U.S. Bank Economic 360, we're all familiar with the Dow Jones Industrial Average, but less well known is its counterpart, the Dow Jones Transportation Average. To enlighten us, U.S. Bank Vice President and Senior Portfolio Manager Mike Denneman is here to discuss this important stock index and what it means for the market. He's with Business Watch producer Kelly Leon in the studio. Mike and Kelly.
Thanks, Peg. Hey, Mike. Thanks for being here. As usual with me, let's back up, start at the beginning. What is the transportation index?
Sure. So, as Peg mentioned, everyone is familiar with the Dow Jones Industrial Average. We see it on the news, we see it in the paper.
Yeah.
To most of us, it represents the U.S. stock market, and maybe even more so now because it's less industrial than the name would suggest. There's a lot of tech companies in there now. There are consumer-oriented companies. So the transportation average is similar, except that it's more narrowly focused. Like its name suggests, it is just focused on transportation companies. So railroads, trucking companies, airlines, package delivery companies. And even though it's smaller in size than the Dow, it has only 20 stocks instead of 30. It still has a lot of recognizable household names in there. So Delta, Federal Express, Norfolk Southern Railroad. And interestingly, it's older than the industrial average. It started in 1884, so just a few years before the Dow. And so maybe not nearly as well known as its younger sibling, but still a very important market index.
And as you said, we don't hear a lot about it, but lately it has been in the news. Why is that?
It has been, you're right. And that's kind of unique. Again, it kind of flies under the radar. But it's in the news recently for all the wrong reasons, and that is because it's been going down sharply. Reason being primarily attributable to the airline stocks. The price of oil has been trending upward lately, and the price of oil very important to airlines because of fuel costs. So they're worried that their profits might shrink, and that in turn pushes down the shares of their stock, which drags the index down.
Right.
But we can't blame just the airlines. Railroads have also been struggling as well. So that's a bad combination for the transports, and that has been pulling the index down. And to put it in perspective, the Dow Industrials have managed a very slight gain so far in 2015. The transports, on the other hand, have lost about 7 or 8%. So that's a pretty wide gap between the two. And it's this gap that is getting the press and what's causing concern.
So what does that mean for stocks in general?
Great question. So there are a segment of investors who believe that what's going on between the two averages now can shed some light on the future direction of the market as a whole. So the concept is called Dow theory, and the very basic premise of which is that in general the industrial average and the transportation average should move in the same direction, and that when they don't, that could be a signal that changes are coming. So the logic here is that, okay, if you own a factory and the economy is doing very well, you're producing more things, you have to ship more things.
Right.
And so that helps the transportation stocks to go up. That's a positive sign. On the other hand, if the economy is weakening, you're producing less, you need to ship less, and that's when we see the transports start to fall. So it's when we see that gap between the two, when they diverge, and now we have the transports falling, but the industrials pretty much staying where they are. That's, in Dow theory, a sign that there could be trouble ahead for the industrial average. So we can never put too much faith in one single indicator. Dow theory has worked in the past. Doesn't always, but it has. So we can't ignore it totally. We need to keep an eye on it. But what it's suggesting is that we could be in for a rough patch for the market as a whole.
Got it. So not great news, but as usual, thanks to you, I understand it better, and I appreciate that. And I like your master's tie.
Thank you. I thought it looked very, very springy.
Very springy. Very nice. Thanks, Mike.